welcome to the Wooper Club League Season 14 Semi-Finals Power Rankings. We got through the 8-9 play-in match and 4 quarterfinals matches that we're here to recap and discuss with you, our dear viewers. I am IllLogic. I am the coach of the Buffalo Bouffalant, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, SteveChuck, coach of the Waterdeep Wobbuffets.
Hey, everybody.
I guess we should get into this then. Before we get into the playoffs proper, we have a play-in match we need to attend to. The Akron Agrons, the number 8 seed, and the Summit County Psyducks, the number 9 seed, both finishing at 4-4, and they squared off for the right to play the number 1 seed Calgary Corviknights, and the winner is the Summit County Psyducks. So the nicely played game 3-0. It all went downhill from turn 1 for the Agrons. Incineroar gets the Intimidate off on Chenpao, but Fridraff's Armor Tail stops the fake out, and even though Lash Out doesn't quite Oko, Cresselia imprisoned from Fridraff will seal Trick Room from going off. A dominating start for the Psyducks. I guess it could get worse though, as Sacred Sword crits Incineroar and gets the Oko there too, though Cobalion does tank a Hyper Voice decently well. Love the ingenuity of the next set though. After you, Indeedee lets Cobalion fire off the Life Orb Aura-Sphere to Oko Chenpao back, but the Psychic Terrain does help Fridraff KO Cobalion back with Psychic. That trick works again after you lets Ursulina Blood Moon, Terra Normal Blood Moon into the Fridraff slot, but Orthworm does eat that up nicely with some help from a Citrus Berry, and Zapdos' Hurricane does 73% right back. Next turn, nice protecting the double up from Hurricane and Body Press, which allows Cresselia back in, but it's another double switch out from both Totskiri and Indeedee, who are left with just above half each. Expanding Force and Muddy Water do combine to take down Orthworm and brings Zapdos low, but T-Bolt finishes off Indeedee. Garchomp finishes Cresselia the next turn, but Muddy Water finishes off Zapdos, but with the speed advantage, Whimsicott finishes Totskiri, Garchomp KOs Ursaluna, and that's a wrap. The Psyducks will move on as the bottom seed in the playoffs, and we'll get to them in a bit. With few matches to discuss and all of them having high impact, we do kind of want to go over these a good bit, but Steve, this really did feel like the writing was on the wall after turn 1, and if not that, then definitely after the Chenpao crit.
Yeah, I was in the voice chat during this match, and Joey was kind of hitting on himself there for forgetting about Armor Tail, and turn 1, as soon as Fake Out says it, but it failed, he was like, well, that's the game. He was fully expecting the Imprison and or possibly dying to Chenpao. I'm not sure which. Probably the Imprison. But was relying on Trick Room for his team to be successful. He did have the Indeedee, that we talked about later. But that only provided so much out of Trick Room offense. He was really relying on Ursaluna doing a lot in Trick Room, and that just wasn't the case this time. It happens, I guess. People do forget and make mistakes. Was definitely ready for a lot, but so all it takes is forgetting about one key ability and things can go downhill fast.
Yeah, forgetting one thing here or there, that's totally fine, but man, did that one make an absolutely huge impact. I do want to at least bring up something positive. I did point out that Cobalion set. Really love how Joey was bringing all these coaching sets and kind of defensive support sets with Cobalion all season, only for that to be Life Orb here in the playoffs. Really like the idea to kind of turn things a different way there, as well as the After You from Indeedee. There were some really nice ideas here, but Steve, it's just adding on to the narrative that he's not getting a playoff win. It feels like it's been quite a while now.
Yeah, another season with another exit early on. He's a consistent performer. Always does make the playoffs, but this is and he's going a little downhill, not dominating the regular season. In this case, barely making it into the playoffs, but all the same makes it in and then doesn't do great. It has been a while. Taking a quick look back, I don't think it was. Season 11 was the most recent season where he had a playoff win. Maybe he had some play-in game wins that I'm forgetting about, but it has been a while for him, and really hoping in future seasons that can change. But with how good the league's getting in general, it's going to get harder and harder to do.
It is pretty tough there. We'll talk a bit more about the Psyducks, I think, in their next match, because they do have another one. But Joey's kind of domination of the regular season and lack of success in the postseason will be, I think, an interesting point of discussion for the tiering system, ranking system, I suppose, rather, in the off-season. But we'll get to that after the next couple of weeks, because we got the quarterfinal matches to go over next. We're going to move on to the first matchup of the week. That was the 4 versus 5, where my favorite team, the Terrifier Heatwave, going up against Steve's favorite team, the Waterdeep Wobbuffets. But it is Steve who takes the first round matchup against the Clawburer's brother, so the second straight season gets to beat one of them. This one was a close 2-0 victory, and this will be featured by Michael on this channel, but with so few matches high impact, we do still have to cover this here. Go check out the match of the week, though, where you will get a lot more insight into the prep sets and some interesting EV spreads from Steve. We'll see if we can make heads or tails of those. It was a seemingly uneventful turn 1, Corviknight switching in for Arcanine, Latios protecting, but Spectre Snarl still hits Glamora, who does get up a layer of spikes, Manaphy in for Latios, but Spectre is not interested, the Mudshot tech to KO Glamora, Corviknight U-turning out into Amoonguss. Heatran does get in on the free switch, meaning Amoonguss protects itself from Heat Wave, but Spectre gets hit for a quarter before firing off a Snarl, lowering Manaphy's Icy Wind's power as well. Rillaboom in for Heatran, trying to make Tank a Mudshot, but Shadow Ball instead hits the hit very low. Manaphy's knockoff brings Spectre down critically low too, then Amoonguss nails the Manaphy with a Spore. Spectre's speed lowered, meaning the U-turn from Rillaboom does pick up the KO, meaning Heatran tanks the Pollen Puff as Manaphy takes its turn of sleep. Heatran out into Latios to tank the flip turn from Swampert after Manaphy wakes up and removes the Mudfish's lefties, but Spore goes into the Latios. Latios eats a Hydro Pump. Icy Wind can lower Bundle's speed, but Manaphy is taking another nap now. And there's another one-turn sleep. Latios' Luster Purge bringing Amoonguss critically low before Citrus Berry, though it will heal up Swampert with a Pollen Puff. Manaphy out into Rillaboom, Amoonguss into Corviknight on Latios, protect, but the next turn, it's a double Terra. Latios into Electric, Corviknight into Dragon. Corviknight does resist Terra Blast now, but Woodhammer just cleanly takes out Swampert in exchange for its own life and recoils. Latios also resists the Brave Bird. Latios and Arcanine protect from Corviknight and the Grassy Seed Sneasler, then Amoonguss comes in to tank close combat for Arcanine, but Corviknight has left itself wide open to the now super effective Draco, so down it goes. Bundle protects from CC as Spore goes off into Sneasler with Manaphy taking the field, followed by a Hydro Pump cleanly OHKOing from Sneasler from full. Heatran's Heat Wave gets protected by Bundle, so it swaps into Latios, but that just goes down to a Hydro Pump too as Arcanine protects itself from a Scald. Snarl will lower Heatran and Manaphy's damage output, but goes down to Scald. With 2 left on each side, Magma Storm connects into Iron Bundle, Hydro Pump back, misses, and that means with help from Scald, Iron Bundle goes down, and without much in the way of offense, Amoonguss cannot hold up and eventually goes down to the Magma Storm and Scald too. Very closely fought match, resulting in a Wobbuffets W. Steve, I don't think there's denying that there was potentially some help there. I saw a couple of one-turn sleeps there on Spores. I know that Hydro Pump miss at the end was pretty critical there too for the game plan from the Heat Wave themselves, which is kind of ironic that your Heat Waves from Heatran were able to do just enough there as well. What do you think about some of that RNG that happened in this matchup here?
The RNG in this matchup was definitely impactful. Something we both had to react to along the way. Also, some critical hits at times as well. I don't think a ton of them were super impactful. The one-turn sleeps were nice, especially as the beneficiary of those. But like the knockoff into the Swampert, Woodhammer, that damage was recovered anyways, and leftovers on it wasn't doing much. Some of the other ones, they kind of woke up at times that really didn't matter too much, but it definitely was to my benefit overall. I did afterwards go through and just look at just the raw RNG, thinking about, it doesn't matter about the timing of it, just what the roll was, and it was more frequently in my favor than not, especially on some of these, low chance things that kept going my way. The Hydro Pump, of course, at the end missing. At the time, I didn't think that mattered too much. I trusted Manaphy to pick up the burnout against the Amoonguss and win there. However, I did fail to account that Manaphy would be asleep for quite a while, and so that Hydro Pump miss was probably pretty important, as without it, Manaphy may have lost to the Mushroom.
Manaphy and Amoonguss, the 1v1 we all really wanted to see at the end of that match there. But a couple of things that I think could have been controlled. I know I heard both players lamenting about the Swampert going down, as well as potentially not using Sneasler to its fullest. You were in the matchup. Take us through those two a little bit.
Yeah, I know afterwards, Staples, coach of the Terrifier Heatwave, had mentioned on the turn Swampert went down to the Woodhammer, they knew they should have protected that turn. At the time I had heard that, I didn't think much of it, because I'm like, well, yeah, Rillaboom just died to recoil, so it really didn't matter too much. You were Brave Birding the Latios. It was afterwards that I realized, that Brave Bird from the Corviknight was definitely going into the Rillaboom. So if Swampert was not taken out at that point, that would have been a pain to get through later. Swampert there providing some nice utility for them, just having that bulky piece there, which at that point, not having the leftovers would have been pretty helpful for me. But in the match that was played, it didn't seem to matter as much. On my side, the Sneasler, there was just a lot of 50-50s predicting what was going to happen. With the Arcanine there was, almost certain that wasn't just going to stay in, or, was certain it was going to protect, but close combat anyways, could have hit the Corviknight there. The next turn, as it switches out, still close combat into it, as the Amoonguss switches in. Could have gone for the acrobatics, could have maybe doubled up the Corviknight, although, that was already covered by Latios. And again, once Bundle was out, the Terrifier Heatwave played that very well with the protecting what Sneasler kind of felt it had to attack, otherwise it would be punished. But all it took would be one read for Sneasler to make a little bit bigger a hole, which would have made the end game a whole lot more cleaner.
Well, I think our main takeaway is that the Heatwave did play this quite well, and I'm a little scared to see what they're going to be doing here in the future. This was an awesome match from both teams. Heatwave showing that they probably do belong in this conversation for teams that can definitely beat up some of the top ones here. Just did not quite go their way this time around. But we have to move on to our next quarterfinals match. If you want more of this, Michael goes in such great detail. It's great for players to kind of learn and get some insight into the minds of these great coaches here. So go check out the match of the week. But our next matchup is probably the one I was most excited for. This is between the doubles powerhouse Cincinnati Incineroar and the perennial amazing Newport Noctowls. And despite Matt's recent success against Jimmy, it's the Noctowls who grabbed the convincing upset win over the Incineroar. Turn 1 Snarl from Iron Jugulus misses Hatterene, but hits Indeedee, who baton passes out to Glasstray, but Hatterene's Trick Room is imprisoned by Mew. Iron Jugulus out into Volcanion on a Hatterene Protect Expanding Force. Mew does a third to Glasstray, who does SD up. Glasstray can protect from Expanding Force Mew, but Haze Volcanion removes the attack up, Deagleam doing a bit of damage back from Hat. That means Expanding Force and Steam Eruption do team up to KO Glasstray, Hatterene finally bringing Mew below half with Deagleam. Never mind, life do up a bit as Volcanion hits Hatterene very low, and his Iron Crown just sits there and protects. Terra Ground this turn, Iron Crown into the Volcanion. Shookaberry, Volcanion survives with ease thanks to another life do, and Steam Eruption Oko's right back as Hatterene is still looking for meaningful damage with Dazzling Gleam. Mew finally swaps out next to Volcanion's Protect as Landorus' Sludge Bomb goes into that, as Dazzling Gleam gets a super effective hit into Jugulus, who of course has a Roselli Berry itself too. Tailwind up from Jugulus, Heatwave goes off, and Oko's poor loss to Lumise, but Lando finally picks up a KO into Volcanion, but that Tailwind is too good for the Noctowls. Ivy Cudgel from Ogrepon picks up Landorus as Snarl brings Indeedee low, then Ivy Cudgel and Snarl finish off the two Psychic types. Steve, it looked like the Noctowls were basically reading off of the Incineroar's team sheet all game and potentially in prep too. That was very, very impressive.
Yeah, throughout the entire battle, it seemed that, everything they had was very useful. The Shookaberry, the Roselli Berry, the Imprison, and able to stop Trick Room and stop Expanding Force. Fantastic prep all around. Also, the Mirror Herb for things that the Incineroar won't even planning. Getting that Sword of Science boost on Mew was really key there. Just so many things that the Noctowls just had the right mon ready to switch in and, take the correct action. I'm not sure if this was so much the Incineroar's game plan being a little predictable with the, Psy-Spam team that they drafted. Everyone knows they got Trick Room, they're going to have Tailwind with the Illumise, and then you got to watch out for, Expanding Force from the Crown and whatever else. And even with the help of Landorus, who, we did hype up a lot last time, but now that they have Landorus, and, Landorus was kind of the bright spot here, being able to pick up that KO for them. Still weren't able to get it done against the well-pivoted and controlled Noctowls team, just clinically pulling them apart.
Yeah, it does feel unfortunate that a team that we had at or near the top all season has already fallen in pretty convincing fashion here. Do you feel that this maybe justifies us a little bit not putting them up as high? I feel like we were kind of waiting for this to happen almost. Do you think this is a result of all of the moves that the Incineroar make? What do you think would be one of the bigger contributing factors to this loss?
There's all sorts of things it could be. I know the Incineroar have had some big life things going on. I don't know if that impacted things. It did lead to this match actually being played in person. I believe both coaches were in the same room as they played this match with each other. That's hearsay, of course. I don't know that for sure, but it is possible they were maybe a little distracted and not putting full effort into prep. It is also possible that as the season went on and on, that they put less and less in, even though it became important here at the end, which is, I guess, something some of the top coaches are definitely able to do, is kind of kick it back into gear for that final playoff push. Or it might just be a case of the Noctowls really are that good, and maybe they were coasting the whole season, and it just was a switch at the this playoff spot that they activated, and now they're going to be pushing ahead into the rest of the playoffs.
Boy, that Mew looks like a problem. Yeah, at least the Incineroar making playoffs several consecutive seasons now is a great sign that they may just be worked back, which is fantastic to see for them. See if they can get a few more playoff wins racked up, potentially in a future season. But instead, it's the Noctowls who will continue on. Okay, we're 2 for 2 on upsets, but here's the toughest test yet for the underdog. We're back to the 9-seeded Summit County Psyducks. They challenged the number 1-seeded Calgary Corviknights. And for the second time in this recap, the Psyducks emerge victorious. Another upset win, giving the Psyducks their big statement win of the season they've been looking for. SteveChuck swaps out into Moltres, but Whimsicott's Tailwind means Garchomp's stopping Tantrum goes into Torkoal anyways, doing well over half, and Whimsicott even survives the Heat Wave. 2 protects, Garchomp SD's up, but Moltres gets off the Will-O-Wisp. Never mind, the Lumberry cures it up. Well, Torkoal out into Klefki, and although Chardyberry lets Moltres survive the Rock Slide, a great taunt from Whimsicott stops the follow-up second Will-O-Wisp. Taunt into Klefki next, the Mental Herb lets Klefki gets off the Reflect, but Rock Slide still enough to finish off Moltres. Klefki gets off a Light Screen too as Whimsicott reestablishes Tailwind. Sandy shocks his Terra Ground Earth Power, going into Terra Ground Garchomp's Protect. Stomping Tantrum destroys Klefki, but Sandy Shocks finally puts an end to Garchomp's reign with another Earth Power. Torkoal into Tenga Moonblast from Whimsicott as Toxapex and Chen Pao protect, but with one turn of Sun left, this is awkward for Calgary. Chen Pao onto Blastoise, protect from Torkoal, but it's another great taunt from Whimsicott to stop Toxapex from using Toxic. Torkoal onto Lilligant, another Tailwind from Whimsicott as the Waters trade Muddy Water. Blastoise to Zapdos, Pex to Torkoal, Whimsicott gets one last taunt off into Lilligant before finally going down. Pex can absorb the Ice Spinner as Torkoal protects T-Bolt, but it doesn't protect again, so T-Bolt brings down Torkoal in exchange for eating a Toxic. Shocks is the free switch. Earth Power will go into Blastoise and letting Zapdos get off another Tailwind. It swaps into Chen Pao as Blastoise gets a Fake Out into Sandy Shock to help it out, and that means that slot is wide open to an Ice Spinner. Sandy Shocks goes down. Blastoise gets up Rain in the meantime as Pex slaps a Toxic on Blastoise too, but that means Lilligant has to come in on another Ice Spinner and goes down, leaving Pex against the world. An accuracy drop on Jirachi. Baneful Bunker poisons the low Chen Pao. The double Baneful Bunker, but a good double on Zapdos means Zach's in a position to attack with lethal damage every turn, and down goes the Pex this time. The huge upset. Zach gets his revenge and moves on. Well played again from Zach. Did not have to break through a Duraludon this time. We talked a little bit about this before, Steve, but this is the second time that the Calgary Corviknights have been the number 1 seed and lost in the first round.
Yeah, are the Calgary Corviknights the new Akron Agrons? They definitely are reminding me of, our stereotypical Agrons at this point, getting, a fantastic regular season. They're not going quite undefeated plus 40 or whatever the Agrons were doing, but 2 fantastic seasons where they, finish as the 1 seed, but then come playoffs, they just get upset by the 8 seeds. Last season it was the Incineroar, this time the Summit County Psyducks. Just taking some of these losses against kind of resurging teams and more of their familiar areas. It's hard to say moving forward. I really hope the Calgary is able to pick up a win in the near future in the playoffs. And now that I say that, they'll play me next season and get that win. But in the meantime, though, they are losing, and I think that next step for them is to win one of these playoff, hopefully 2 or 3 of these playoff games.
It's a pretty decent goal to have there, but does not come against Zach, who just has impressed with 2 consecutive matches here, turning it on at just the right time. I really love the makeup of this team, right? The Whimsicott put in so much work in this matchup, being able to get off several different taunts. I think there were 4 different instances of Tailwind between that and the Zapdos. And the previous game we saw the play with and against Trick Room as well with the Fridgeraff. It's actually pretty well balanced over here. Zach as a number 9 seed, still kind of maybe getting back into his elements as the sole survivor of the trio that we talked about at the beginning of the season with a lot of doubles experience. What do you make of this resurgence from a Season 5 champion, Summit County Psyducks?
Yeah, this is fantastic to see, and this is definitely their preferred format. I know we always talked about the trio of guys who have more VGC experience, and of them, Zach and the Psyducks are definitely have the least. I know Matt definitely does a ton, and John does some, but Zach's kind of the one who does the least of them, to my knowledge at least, in terms of VGC, but he's the one who has the best results in the league in doubles, both winning the VGC seasons in the past and now coming in here in our doubles draft season and, making it all the way to semis. He did have a little bit of a spottier regular season, but again, I think we've talked about how he played his 4 losses were to 4 other playoff teams. And now coming in here and getting revenge on one of those games, make it up to semis, it's a great story. He's in a great spot to, keep going. And yeah, he is playing fantastic. The field control he showed throughout this battle, you mentioned the Whimsicott just staying out there and tailwinding so many times, as well as getting a ton of useful taunts off. It was on there for the first 10 turns of the games, just clicking moves. And, in the end, it ended up trading pretty evenly with the opponent's team, even though Whimsicott itself really didn't do a ton of direct damage. It just kept supporting its teammate for a while, Garchomp there, and then Zapdos Efrat came in. making sure it was going first, making sure the opponent couldn't use the status moves, and it just kept working, really breaking down the Calgary team such that the rest of the Psyducks was able to clean it up in the end game.
I think also interesting, we see a couple of potentially predictable strategies here in the last couple of losers here, right? You talked about how the Incineroar often could have that Trick Room element, they often have the Psychic Train element, and obviously the Corviknight have that Sun element to them as well. Wonder if that predictability is getting in the way there too. But we have to move on, of course, to the final match. The Wooper Boopers have a chance to do something very funny and hand the Buffalo Bouffalant both of their Season 14 losses while completing the 4-for-4 upset sweep. But my Bouffalant do clear the Boopers this time, grabbing a 2-0 win and moving on. Turn 1, Meowstic gets up the Light Screen, Gouging Fire, Stone Edge goes into a protecting Chi-Yu, and Gothitelle gets off the T-Wave into Gouging Fire. Brutal. Chi-Yu out into Gyarados for the Intimidate. Sunny Day to boost Gouging Fire's defense. Stone Edge misses Gothitelle this time as T-Wave can also paralyze the Meowstic. Goth into Rotom Wash, who also dodges a Stone Edge, so Meowstic can finally switch out into Venusaur, but as it does, the double dance, Dragon Dance to Gyarados and Rain Dance Rotom Wash as Gouging Fire misses its third straight Stone Edge. Heesh, no damage done through 4 turns. A little embarrassing on my part. Terra Blast flying, though, from Gyarados does bring the Meowstic switching in low. Rotom's Hydro Pump misses Gouging Fire, who is apparently trapped in a Gravity Well, except that it finally hits a Stone Edge to bring Gyarados below half. Rotom back into Gothitelle and double for full paralysis as damage is looking very sparse, followed by a Fake Out and Terra Blast into Gouging Fire to bring it below half after the Reflect. Sunny Day gives Gouging Fire the defense boost, which lets it live another Terra Blast, and even after paralysis, it's faster than Gothitelle, so it can KO Gyarados with Stone Edge before Heal Pulse can go off. A huge turn for the Boopers, but even so, Rotom back in to set up Rain Dance as Gothitelle finally finishes off Gouging Fire with a Psychic, even as Light Screen is back up. Venusaur in now, Rotom out for Shaman Sky as Sun goes up. That's a Sleep Powder into Gothitelle. The Boopers determined to free their Meowstic, who's out of things to do now that it's trapped. Shaman out into Chi-Yu as Weather Ball brings Gothitelle dangerously low. Giga Drain finishes it off the next turn, but the return Heat Wave KOs both Venusaur and Meowstic, even through Light Screen. A ridiculously long early game completed. We've now got Chi-Yu, Rotom, Primarina, and Torn. Primarina protecting to allow Torn to set up the Tailwind, but Heat Wave and Electro Web finish off Torn right after. Final 2 months for the Boopers. Close Combat and Moonblast do combine to KO Rotom even after a Citrus Berry. Lycanroc will have to eat a Psychic, though, with -1 Spit F. I put a Light Screen up, and it's a crit. That does enough to KO it. And that leaves just Primarina with 2 turns of Tailwind left. Iron Treads and Chi-Yu both protect on the Terra Fairy, followed by an Iron Tread switch into Skyman as Chi-Yu goes down to Hyper Voice, but with Tailwind down, Iron Treads and Skyman now outspeed. Air Slash plus Heavy Slam take down Primarina. The Bouffalant get their revenge and grab a win against the Boopers in the postseason, and also guaranteeing, Steve, that I do not have a losing record against any coach this season because everybody else is a team that I've already played, which may be a testament to my difficult schedule here, but I don't want to talk too much about myself. We really should discuss the Boopers and how they actually had a very good season, and despite this loss, played very well yet again.
Yeah, fantastic season, being the only team so far to have beaten your team, the Buffalo Bouffalant. That's a great task to see. And, it's good to see the Boopers once again defeating a top team. It had been, I believe, a couple seasons since they've done so, and they come in and occasionally break into those top teams and take a win. And it's always great to see, as one of those top teams, maybe not as much, especially one that has lost to them in the past. But, I very much like the teams getting challenged and really like the concept of these top teams getting shaken up. And the Boopers are one of those teams that I think, season to season definitely can do it, and they showed it this time. And even in this loss, there was a moment when things felt really good in this match. Up until the Heat Wave double KO, things were feeling fantastic. They had finally broken through the Gothitelle. It got you down to 4 Mons. It was just in that Chi-Yu Heat Wave that take out both of those options, which, admittedly it should have. Really, things started to go poorly after that point. But yeah, really great things to see so far.
Also kind of interesting that we talked about the adjustments to make in this rematch. I actually did bring half of my team being new Mons from the first time around, but the Boopers choosing to stick with the same 6. I think actually my team ended up looking probably a little better against some of those options that were not brought, which actually does turn things around for the Boopers, but they were able to swap around a couple of choice items, which was kind of interesting. But otherwise, Steve, how annoying is Gothitelle? That thing, keeping Meowstic trapped, felt like a huge part of that early game and really slowed things down.
It definitely is a massive part, and it's something that I don't think a lot of coaches necessarily realize. I'm sure the Boopers realized it at the time, but I do recall I was in a voice chat with some other coaches, and after we'd finished what we were up to, someone asked, why did Meowstic just hang around for so while and just keep using Light Screen? And, it wasn't even apparent that, oh yeah, Gothitelle Shadow Tag and was trapping it there. It's not, the first thing you think of because we so rarely see it, and it's so exciting to finally see someone do something with a trapping ability. So often we, in the rules discussions are thinking, hey, should Shadow Tag or Arena Trap be banned or legal? And, it's always like, well, no one's done anything with it. Well, we're starting to see a little bit with it, but then, Gothitelle definitely is a lot better in doubles with it has that additional utility of heal pulse, fake out, and the such. So definitely nice to finally see that do something. And, it was a little annoying here. It prevented Meowstick from switching out, kept it so it was doing nothing, which is definitely a benefit for it. We'll see if Shadow Tag can continue to be used as effectively in these next couple of matches, assuming Gothitelle comes. And, whether or not we do want to reconsider that or if we want to see more from Shadow Tag in the future.
Oh boy, if you think it's annoying here, wait till you see what it does in singles. We're going to start PP stalling. Oh boy, I don't know if we're going to talk about it being fun at that point. But with that, we do have the Final Four set, not just for us, but also for the Beginners League. So I think we should talk a little bit about those. You thought it was Upset City in our league. Well, same thing happened in the Beginners League. Here's your semifinal schedule. The number 1 seeded Rocky Mountain Cloisters did make it through, but here they are facing the number 7 Hungry Hungry Hypnos with the 5 and 6 Bouffalant Herd and Talonflames also facing off in the semifinals. I've said it before, Steve, but the level of play in the Beginners League has been so impressive to me. A lot of upsets here, sure, but I think we may be seeing some future main leaguers here too.
Yeah, that is definitely. I've definitely heard from the coach of the Cloisters. I believe I heard at least that they intend to play in the main league, and I definitely want to extend a hand to some of these other coaches. There was every team that made the playoffs really has been doing fantastic. We saw some very nice records, and not only nice records, but also nice gameplay throughout. And yes, these coaches may not be at the level of you and I, but there are certainly many coaches within the main league that also aren't at that level. And, maybe I'm sounding a little egotistical here, but, there's a wide array of talent within the main league. And a lot of these coaches, I think, are ready. They can move up and, take that next step. And it certainly helps. You'll have some challenging matches against similar and some tough matches, but those are the matches that really push you to your limits and allow you to get better. So I'm really hoping to see a lot of these coaches move up. And then, maybe in the not too distant future, we'll be up to a nice 32-person main league. Oh, what a day that'll be!
That sounds fun for whoever has to schedule that. Yeah, I think we've seen teams like the Terrifier Heatwave dominate the Beginners League, which is nice, and obviously they deserve to come up, and obviously they almost took a game off of you here in the playoffs too. It's so enjoyable to see several different teams having great matches against each other in the Beginners League. And hey, if any of them turn out to be like the Terrifier Heatwave or the Wooper Boopers, yeah, they can definitely take games off of the top teams. And if you do that at the right time, boy, do you suddenly make a name for yourself in the main league. And maybe that's something to build off of too. So we're going to keep an eye on the Beginners League. We'll come back to them, I'm sure, in the near future. But for now, we do have to finish off this video by talking about the semifinals matches for the main league. It's the 2 versus 9 and the 5 versus 6. We'll start off, I suppose, with the Bouffalant Psyducks. Steve, this is, as I mentioned, too, a rematch. I've played all the remaining teams here. So Bouffalant Psyducks, I believe, played in week 4 with the Bouffalant taking the win there. If I remember correctly, Rotom Wash and Gothitelle were a huge part of that one. What do you see about this matchup, and who do you expect to win?
I would say that the favorite going in, not looking too much, especially at like team comps or anything, would be the Bouffalant, the historical record, as well as the win this season. Both are kind of pointing towards the Bouffalant. But the Psyducks have been on a hot streak into these playoffs. They're playing their team quite well with their control of the field effects. That'll be definitely something the Bouffalant have to pay attention to moving forward for this matchup. And I could see the Psyducks upsetting, but I definitely do think it is the Bouffalant's game to lose.
It might be a little tough with the rematch, of course, very difficult one, and the Psyducks have beaten me a couple of times in the league, recently as Season 12, I believe, even, but this should be fun. Speaking of, hey, Wobbuffets, Noctels, yeah, different seeds, but basically the exact same record and differential here. This should be an awesome one between 2 of our top 3 teams here going up against each other. What are you looking at that you can reveal to us? Tell us your secrets.
Oh, if I had any secrets to share at this point, I might blab on them, but I haven't started thinking about it yet. This is looking to be a great match. This is actually also a repeat of the semifinals from last season, which I admittedly don't remember anything about, and I can't really look at the replay. Although I did, as we were going through this past week of matches, recalled you talk about these matches. So following this recording session, I'm definitely gonna go hear you talk about how our semifinal match went last time so I can remind myself how that went and feel good for a little bit. I am pretty nervous about this matchup. The Noctowls win in quarterfinals was definitely a lot more dominant than mine. And although I do come in here as the 5 seed compared to their 6 seed, we were both 6-2 plus 13. We both won 6 games, lost 1 to the Bouffalant, and lost 1 to a team that missed the playoffs and didn't do so hot. So our seasons really were very similar. I just edged ahead on the next tiebreaker, and so I played Terrifier Heatwave instead of the Incineroar. But, here it comes down. We'll have to play each other. Didn't play in this regular season, so our first look at each other. Noctowls are, of course, always a fantastic coach, and I'm sure it'll be a great game. But I am pretty nervous for it and hopeful to make it to the finals once again.
We talked about the matches in the past. Hopefully I'll be just as unhinged for these semifinal recaps as I was last time, because that's going to do it for us here in this go-around. We only have 3 matches left for Season 14, and you already know I've typed way too much about tier changes for next season. We've already got some discussion going on that, but that's going to have to wait till after the finals, because we do have some exciting matches still left to go here, still have a champion to crown, and we will see you next time as we decide who will be fighting for the crown. The result of the semifinal matches coming up next. Don't forget to check out the feature match too. We'll see you later.